On a crisp autumn evening in Brooklyn, the streets bustled with life. The orange and yellow hues of fallen leaves danced across the sidewalks, carried by a gentle breeze that signaled the impending arrival of winter. Amid the chatter of passers-by and the hum of cars crawling through the narrow streets, an elderly black woman named Miss Ethel made her way home from the grocery store. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Miss Ethel was a familiar figure in the neighborhood. With her warm smile and cheerful demeanor, she had lived in the same modest apartment for over 40 years, watching the neighborhood evolve and change around her. She was well into her 70s now, her hair a crown of silvery gray curls, and her movements deliberate, yet steady. The people who knew her admired her resilience. She had lived through decades of challenges, but carried herself with an unshakable grace. That evening, she had stopped by her favorite corner market to pick up a few essentials. Her canvas shopping bag hung from her wrist, filled with fresh produce and a loaf of bread. As she strolled toward her apartment, the setting sun cast a golden glow over the city. She smiled at a group of children playing jump rope and exchanged pleasantries with a neighbor sweeping his stoop. Just a few blocks away, however, trouble was brewing. A group of three men, rough-looking and belligerent, loitered near a dimly lit alleyway. They leaned against the brick wall, their voices low and conspiratorial, their eyes scanning the street like vultures circling their prey. The leader of the group, a wiry man with a scar running across his cheek, pointed his chin toward Miss Ethel as she approached. "She's alone," he muttered, "and old. Easy target." The others exchanged glances, nodding in agreement. They weren't from the neighborhood, which was why they didn't recognize Miss Ethel or her standing among the locals. To them, she was just another vulnerable elder, someone they could intimidate for a few dollars or a piece of jewelry. They slipped from the shadows and began to follow her, their footsteps quiet but purposeful. Miss Ethel, though unaware of their presence, had a keen sense for the subtle shifts in energy around her. She felt a chill crawl up her spine and tightened her grip on her shopping bag. Her apartment was only a block away, and she quickened her pace, hoping to reach the safety of her building before her unease turned into something more. At that very moment, another figure entered the scene. Mike Tyson, the legendary heavyweight boxing champion, had spent the afternoon visiting a nearby gym where he occasionally trained and mentored young boxers. Though his days of dominating the ring were long behind him, Tyson remained a formidable presence. Standing over 6 feet tall, his muscular frame and signature face tattoo were instantly recognizable. Yet for all his fame and notoriety, Tyson had a quiet demeanor, a man who had learned through hard-won lessons to temper his ferocity with wisdom. As he exited the gym and turned onto the street, Tyson's sharp eyes immediately noticed the unfolding situation. He saw the three men trailing Miss Ethel, their predatory intent as clear as day. His instincts, honed from years of fighting both in and out of the ring, kicked in. Tyson's pace slowed, his brow furrowing as he assessed the men's movements. He knew he had to act quickly but deliberately. Confrontation was inevitable, but the timing would be everything. The men caught up to Miss Ethel just as she reached her building's front steps. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, stepped in front of her, blocking her path. The scar-faced leader positioned himself behind her while the third lingered to the side, his eyes darting nervously. "Hey, lady," the leader drawled, his voice oozing with menace. "Why don't you let us help you with that bag?" Miss Ethel's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "No, thank you," she said firmly, clutching her bag to her chest. "I can manage just fine." The burly man chuckled darkly. "We insist." Before they could make their next move, a deep, commanding voice cut through the air like a blade. "Hey, leave her alone!" All three men turned toward the source of the voice. Mike Tyson stood a few yards away, his arms crossed over his broad chest, his face a mask of steely determination. The street lamp overhead cast a shadow that made him seem even larger, his imposing silhouette enough to make even the boldest man think twice. The leader sneered, attempting to mask his unease. "And who are you supposed to be?" Tyson took a step closer, his presence growing more formidable with every stride. "I'm the guy who's going to make sure you don't hurt her." Recognition dawned on the men's faces as they realized who they were dealing with. The shaved-head man's bravado faltered, his eyes widening. "Wait a minute, that's Mike Tyson." The leader hesitated but tried to save face. "We don't want any trouble," he said, raising his hands defensively. "We were just Talking to her. Tyson's gaze never wavered. You call that talking? Looks more like harassment to me. Miss Ethel, sensing that the tide was turning in her favor, stepped back to let Tyson handle the situation. Her fear gave way to a cautious relief as she watched the three men squirm under his piercing stare. Here's what's gonna happen, Tyson said, his voice low and steady. You're gonna apologize to this lady, and then you're gonna walk away. Understand? The men nodded hastily, their earlier bravado evaporating like mist under the sun. We're sorry, the leader mumbled, avoiding Miss Ethel's eyes. Tyson took another step forward, his fists clenched at his sides. Louder, like you mean it. We're sorry, ma'am, the three men said in unison, their voices trembling. Satisfied, Tyson motioned with his head. Now get out of here. The men didn't need to be told twice. They scurried off down the street, disappearing into the night like rats retreating to their holes. Tyson watched them go, his body tense, ready to spring into action if they dared to double back. When he was certain they were gone, he turned to Miss Ethel. Are you okay, ma'am? He asked, his tone softening. Miss Ethel nodded, her hand resting over her heart. Thanks to you, young man. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up. Tyson smiled gently. Just glad I was in the right place at the right time. He offered to carry her bag the rest of the way, and she accepted with a grateful smile. As they walked to her apartment door, she shared stories of her life in the neighborhood and marveled at how fate had brought them together that evening. By the time they reached her door, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, having heard about the incident. They applauded Tyson for his bravery and kindness, showering him with words of gratitude. Miss Ethel, ever the gracious host, invited him inside for a cup of tea, which he gladly accepted. As they sat in her cozy living room, the events of the evening began to sink in. Tyson realized that his fame and strength, often sources of controversy in his past, had been used for good in a moment that mattered. Miss Ethel, meanwhile, felt a renewed sense of faith in humanity, knowing that heroes could emerge when least expected. The story of that night quickly spread throughout the neighborhood, becoming the stuff of local legend. For Miss Ethel, it was a tale of resilience and the power of community. For Mike Tyson, it was a reminder that true strength wasn't just about power. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And for everyone who heard it, it was a story of hope. Proof that even in a world fraught with challenges, goodness could prevail. As Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson sat together in her living room, the atmosphere was warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the tense encounter from earlier. The walls were adorned with family photos and vintage art prints, telling the story of a life well lived. A faint aroma of lavender lingered in the air, mingling with the steam rising from the tea Miss Ethel had just poured. Mike Tyson leaned back slightly in his chair, cradling the delicate teacup in his large hands. He wasn't entirely sure why he had accepted her invitation, but something about her presence felt grounding. Miss Ethel, for her part, saw not just a celebrity, but a kind-hearted man who had stepped in when she needed help the most. "Thank you again for what you did out there," she said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, though the lingering tremor of earlier fear had not entirely left her. "You didn't have to, but you did." Tyson waved off her gratitude modestly. "Anyone with a heart would have done the same, ma'am." She gave him a knowing smile, her sharp eyes twinkling with wisdom. "I've been around long enough to know that's not always the case. You're a good man, Mr. Tyson." "Mike," he corrected, smiling faintly. "Just Mike." Miss Ethel nodded. "All right, Mike. Tell me something. What brought you to this neighborhood? I don't recall seeing you around here before." Tyson chuckled softly, the sound deep and resonant. "I've been visiting a gym a few blocks over. Sometimes I like to work with the young fighters, teach them a thing or two. Keeps me busy." The old woman leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "Teaching, huh? I imagine you have a lot to teach. Lord knows you've lived quite the life." Her words weren't a question but a statement, and Tyson could only nod in agreement. His life had indeed been one of extremes. Triumphs and failures, fame and infamy, fortune and loss. The stories behind his name could fill volumes, but in that moment, he found himself more interested in learning about Miss Ethel's life than recounting his own. "What about you?" he asked. "How long have you lived here?" She sipped her tea, her gaze growing distant as she delved into memories. "I moved here in 1973, back when the neighborhood was a whole different place. My husband and I saved every penny to buy this apartment, raised 3 kids here, watched them grow and leave to start families of their own. It wasn't always easy, but this place has always been home. Tyson listened intently, his respect for her growing with every word. It was clear that Miss Ethel had faced her share of challenges, yet she spoke with no bitterness, only the quiet strength of someone who had endured and thrived. Her voice softened as she continued. I lost my husband some years back. Cancer took him. But I've got my memories, and those keep me company. And of course, the neighbors. They've been like family. Tyson nodded, understanding the weight of loss and the solace found in community. He glanced around the room again, his eyes landing on a framed black and white photo of a young couple. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, the woman radiant and smiling. Is that you and your husband? He asked. Miss Ethel followed his gaze and smiled wistfully. Yes, that's us. Clarence was his name. He was my rock, strong as an oak tree, but gentle as a summer breeze. You would have liked him. The conversation meandered from there, touching on everything from Miss Ethel's favorite recipes to Tyson's memories of growing up in Brownsville. They discovered shared connections to the city, a mutual love for Coney Island hot dogs, and memories of riding the subway on hot summer days. Outside, the night deepened, and the streets grew quieter. The incident with the three men seemed like a distant memory, though its impact lingered. It wasn't just the act of Tyson stepping in to help, it was the unspoken bond that had formed between two strangers from different walks of life. The next morning, word of the encounter had spread like wildfire. A local reporter who lived in the building heard about the incident and showed up at Miss Ethel's door, notepad in hand. The story of Mike Tyson saving Miss Ethel quickly made its way onto social media, where it was met with an outpouring of admiration and gratitude. Miss Ethel's phone didn't stop ringing for days. Friends, family, and even distant acquaintances called to check on her and share their amazement at her unexpected brush with the heavyweight champion. She laughed at the attention, brushing it off as much ado about nothing. Tyson, meanwhile, found himself in the spotlight once again, though this time for reasons that filled him with pride. When asked about the incident during an interview, he downplayed his role. I just did what anyone would have done, he said, his humility endearing him to an audience that had seen him in every light, from a fearsome fighter to a reflective man seeking redemption. Despite the media frenzy, Tyson made it a point to stay in touch with Miss Ethel. He visited her regularly, often bringing small gifts, a bouquet of flowers, a box of chocolates, or a loaf of freshly baked bread from a local bakery. Their conversations deepened, and Tyson found himself opening up about his struggles and triumphs in a way he rarely did with anyone else. Miss Ethel, in turn, shared more of her own wisdom, her words often punctuated with laughter, or a gentle pat on his hand. She became a confidant, a friend, and in many ways, a surrogate grandmother to a man who had spent much of his life searching for connection and belonging. As the weeks turned into months, their bond inspired others in the neighborhood. The story of their unlikely friendship became a symbol of resilience, kindness, and the power of community. It was a reminder that heroes could come in many forms, a boxing legend with fists like iron, or an elderly woman with a heart full of courage. One afternoon, as they sat on Miss Ethel's stoop watching the world go by, she turned to Tyson with a twinkle in her eye. You know, Mike, you're a lot like Clarence. Tyson raised an eyebrow, surprised. Yeah? How so? He was a fighter too, she said. Not in the ring, but in life. Always standing up for what was right, always protecting the people he loved. You've got that same fire in you. Her words struck a chord deep within Tyson. For all his accolades and achievements, it was moments like this, being seen, truly seen, that meant the most. He smiled, humbled by the comparison. Thank you, Miss Ethel, he said quietly. That means a lot. The days continued to roll on, and though life returned to its usual rhythms, the impact of that autumn evening remained. Miss Ethel became something of a local celebrity herself, often approached by neighbors who wanted to hear the story firsthand. She told it with her signature humor and warmth, always giving credit to Tyson for his timely intervention. Tyson, for his part, found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned from Miss Ethel. Her strength, resilience, and unwavering faith in people reminded him of the values he wanted to embody. He began speaking more openly about the importance of community and the responsibility everyone shared to look out for one another. Years later, when Tyson was asked about the most meaningful moments of his life, he didn't hesitate to include that evening in Brooklyn. "It wasn't about being a fighter," he said in an interview. "It was about being human. That's what Miss Ethel taught me." Miss Ethel lived to see many more seasons, her life enriched by her friendship with Tyson and the love of her neighbors. When she passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87, Tyson was among the first to deliver a heartfelt eulogy at her memorial service. His words were simple yet profound, a tribute to the woman who had become a guiding light in his life. "She taught me that strength isn't just about muscles or titles," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's about kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. Miss Ethel was the strongest person I've ever known." The memory of their connection lived on in the hearts of all who heard their story. It became a beacon of hope and a reminder of the profound impact one person could have on another, no matter how different their paths in life might seem. And so, the legend of Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson endured, a story of bravery, friendship, and the unyielding power of the human spirit. As the story of Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson rippled through the neighborhood, it sparked a transformation far greater than either of them could have anticipated. Their bond, forged on that fateful evening, became a symbol of resilience and unity in a community that had long grappled with its own challenges. From that moment, the corner of Brooklyn where Miss Ethel lived became a hub of activity, hope, and renewal. Mike Tyson, initially a visitor to the neighborhood, became an integral part of its fabric. What began as casual visits to check on Miss Ethel turned into a full-fledged commitment to the area. He partnered with local organizations to fund community projects, renovate playgrounds, and improve safety measures for seniors. His connection with Miss Ethel had ignited a sense of purpose, and he was determined to channel his resources and influence into making a tangible difference. One of Tyson's most ambitious projects was the creation of a boxing program for local youth. He converted an old, abandoned warehouse into a state-of-the-art training facility, complete with a gym, a study lounge, and a mentoring space. The gym became a safe haven for kids who might otherwise have fallen into trouble, offering them discipline, structure, and a sense of belonging. Tyson named the facility Ethel's Corner, in honor of the woman who had inspired him to give back. The grand opening of Ethel's Corner was a community event unlike any other. The streets buzzed with excitement as families, local leaders, and even a few celebrities gathered to celebrate. Miss Ethel, seated in a place of honor near the ribbon-cutting stage, beamed with pride. Tyson stood beside her, his imposing frame softened by a warm smile. When it came time for speeches, Miss Ethel took the microphone, her voice steady despite the crowd. "This community has always been my home," she said, her words carrying a deep sense of gratitude. "And now, thanks to Mike, it's not just my home. It's a place where our young people can dream, grow, and thrive. Let's remember, it's not about how much we have, but what we do with what we have. And Mike here, he's done something wonderful." Her words were met with thunderous applause, and Tyson, humbled, took the stage next. "Miss Ethel taught me what it means to care for others," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "She reminded me that strength isn't just physical. It's about having the courage to stand up for what's right and to lift others up when they need it. This gym isn't just about boxing, it's about giving kids a chance to be the best version of themselves." The gym quickly became a cornerstone of the community. Tyson spent hours mentoring the young fighters, sharing not only his knowledge of boxing, but also his life lessons. He spoke openly about his struggles with fame, his mistakes, and the importance of resilience. The kids, many of whom faced their own challenges, looked up to him not just as a champion, but as a role model. Miss Ethel, though no boxer herself, became a frequent visitor to the gym. She'd bring homemade cookies for the kids, cheer them on during sparring sessions, and offer her signature words of encouragement. "Keep your head up," she'd say to a discouraged young fighter. "The fight isn't over until you decide it is." Beyond the gym, the impact of their story extended to the broader community. Local businesses flourished as Tyson's initiatives brought new attention and foot traffic to the area. The once neglected park where children played jump rope was renovated with Tyson's support, complete with new benches, a fountain, and a plaque honoring Miss Ethel. Community members began to step up in their own ways, inspired by the example set by Tyson and Miss Ethel. Neighbors formed watch groups to improve safety, held cleanup drives, and organized events that brought people together. The sense of unity that had emerged after the incident with the three men only grew stronger, creating a neighborhood where people truly looked out for one another. Miss Ethel's apartment became a gathering place for people of all ages. On any given day, her cozy living room was filled with laughter, stories, and the aroma of her famous sweet potato pie. Tyson often stopped by with his family, and the two would spend hours talking about everything from current events to their shared love of animals. Miss Ethel's cat, an ornery tabby named Jasper, even took a liking to Tyson, often curling up in his lap as they chatted. As the years went by, the friendship between Tyson and Miss Ethel deepened, and their influence continued to grow. Tyson's gym produced several talented fighters who went on to achieve regional and national recognition, but more importantly, it produced young men and women who carried themselves with confidence, discipline, and integrity. Many of them credited both Tyson and Miss Ethel for changing the trajectory of their lives. One young man in particular, Jamal, stood out. A talented boxer with lightning-fast reflexes, Jamal had been on the brink of dropping out of school when he joined Ethel's corner. Tyson took him under his wing, recognizing not just his athletic potential but also his sharp mind. Miss Ethel, too, played a pivotal role, often inviting Jamal over for dinner and encouraging him to pursue his education alongside his boxing dreams. With their guidance, Jamal not only became a champion in the ring, but also the first in his family to graduate from college. At his graduation ceremony, he gave a heartfelt speech, thanking both Tyson and Miss Ethel for believing in him when he didn't believe in himself. "They taught me that strength comes from within," he said, "and that no matter how hard life hits, you can always get back up." The years brought both triumphs and losses. Miss Ethel's health began to decline, and the neighborhood, while thriving, faced new challenges as gentrification brought changes that weren't always welcome. Yet through it all, the legacy of that autumn evening remained a beacon of hope. When Miss Ethel passed away, her funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives she had touched. Tyson delivered a eulogy that left no dry eye in the room. "She was more than a friend," he said. "She was family. She reminded me of who I wanted to be, and she showed me what it means to truly live with purpose. I'll carry her lessons with me for the rest of my life." In the years that followed, Tyson continued to honor Miss Ethel's memory in everything he did. Ethel's Corner expanded, opening additional locations in underserved communities across the country. Each gym bore her name and carried her spirit, offering not just boxing training, but academic support, mentorship, and a sense of belonging. The story of Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson became more than a neighborhood legend. It became a testament to the power of connection and the profound impact one act of kindness can have. It reminded people that heroes aren't defined by capes or fame, but by their willingness to step up when it matters most. The legacy of Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson continued to evolve, weaving itself into the fabric of the community and inspiring stories far beyond the borders of their Brooklyn neighborhood. The transformation that had started with a single act of bravery grew into something profound, touching lives in ways neither of them could have foreseen. Years after Miss Ethel's passing, Tyson's life had shifted once again. While he remained deeply involved in his community efforts and the expansion of Ethel's Corner, he found himself frequently reflecting on the lessons he had learned from her. Miss Ethel's wisdom had become his moral compass, guiding his decisions not only in his professional endeavors, but also in his personal relationships. Her words about the importance of kindness and resilience stayed with him, shaping the way he approached the world. One afternoon, Tyson was invited to speak at a national conference on community leadership and philanthropy. The event, held in a grand hall filled with activists, educators, and nonprofit leaders, was a far cry from the boxing arenas where Tyson had once dominated. Yet, as he stepped onto the stage, the applause was just as thunderous. He began his speech with a story, one that had become deeply familiar to him but never lost its significance. He spoke about that pivotal evening when he had intervened to protect Miss Ethel and how that moment had changed his life. "I thought I was stepping in to save her," he said, his voice resonating through the hall, "but the truth is, she saved me. She reminded me what strength truly means." The audience listened intently as Tyson shared how the encounter had led him to reflect on his own journey. his triumphs, his failures, and the ways in which he could use his platform to give back. He spoke about Ethel's Corner and the young lives it had impacted, emphasizing the importance of creating opportunities for those who needed them most. By the end of his speech, the room was on its feet, a standing ovation honoring not just Tyson's words, but the enduring power of the story he carried. In the years that followed, Tyson's influence extended even further. He became a sought-after speaker, traveling to schools, prisons, and community centers to share his story and inspire others to find their own paths to redemption and service. His presence, once defined by an intimidating aura, had transformed into something deeply inspiring. Wherever he went, people saw not just a former heavyweight champion, but a man who had learned the value of humility, compassion, and second chances. The gyms that bore Miss Ethel's name became more than just places for boxing. They became hubs for education, mentorship, and personal growth. Tyson worked with local artists to create murals in each gym, honoring the spirit of the communities they served. One particularly striking mural featured Miss Ethel herself, her kind face painted with vibrant colors, surrounded by symbols of hope and resilience. Beneath the mural was a quote Tyson often attributed to her: "Strength isn't about how hard you hit, it's about how much heart you have." The story of Miss Ethel and Tyson also found its way into books and films. A documentary chronicling their journey was released to critical acclaim, highlighting the transformative power of their friendship and the ripple effect it had on their community. Tyson participated in the project wholeheartedly, providing rare glimpses into his personal life and the ways in which Miss Ethel had influenced his perspective. The documentary became a source of inspiration for audiences worldwide, sparking similar initiatives in cities as far-flung as Chicago, London, and Johannesburg. Back in Brooklyn, the neighborhood where it all began continued to flourish. The playground Tyson had renovated became a bustling center of activity, filled with the laughter of children and the joyful chatter of families. Local businesses thrived, buoyed by the sense of community pride that had been rekindled. Residents often spoke of Miss Ethel and Tyson in the same breath, their stories serving as a reminder of what could be achieved when people came together. Among the many lives touched by Ethel's Corner, one stood out in particular: a young girl named Amina. Raised by a single mother who worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, Amina had joined the gym at the age of 13. Quiet and introverted, she struggled to find her place in the world, but through the mentorship of Tyson and the support of the community, Amina blossomed. She discovered a love for boxing and an even greater passion for public speaking, using her platform to advocate for youth empowerment. Years later, as a college graduate and a rising star in her own right, Amina returned to Ethel's Corner as a mentor. She often spoke about how the story of Miss Ethel and Tyson had inspired her to believe in her own potential. "If a single moment can change the course of someone's life," she often said, "then imagine what we can achieve when we build a lifetime of moments like that." As time marched on, the bond between Tyson and Miss Ethel became a lasting legacy, one that transcended generations. The streets of Brooklyn, once a backdrop for fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a vibrant tapestry of hope and resilience. The people who lived there carried the spirit of their story, finding strength in its lessons and passing them on to others. The impact of Miss Ethel and Mike Tyson's story extended far beyond their neighborhood, growing into a beacon of hope that resonated with people from all walks of life. Over time, their tale became a cornerstone of discussions about community strength, mentorship, and the unexpected ways lives could change through acts of courage and kindness. Ethel's Corner continued to expand, with Tyson spearheading initiatives that went beyond boxing. Each new location featured programs focused on literacy, career training, and mental health support, ensuring that the gyms were more than just athletic spaces. They were sanctuaries for growth and healing. Tyson often visited these locations, listening to the stories of young people who had been given a second chance, and reminding them of the lessons Miss Ethel had instilled in him. At the heart of all this progress was the enduring spirit of the Brooklyn neighborhood where it all began. Generations grew up hearing the story of Miss Ethel's courage and Tyson's intervention, carrying its lessons into their own lives. It became a legacy rooted in the belief that the smallest act of bravery could ripple outward, creating a chain reaction of hope that could change the world, one life at a time. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us? What do you think Mike Tyson did in this situation? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.